The goal today is to get everyone understanding of how this works and how we landed on our best practices. So I know the last time we did a webinar, it was rather quick and we tried to cover a lot in a very short amount of time. Today we're going to really focus in on exhibits, and hopefully by doing that, it will allow us more time to spend with every individual part of sharing exhibits in a remote Depo. As a reminder, with fully remote Depos as compared to remote Depos that you may have traditionally done, in a fully remote Depo, everyone is in their own location, whether that be their home or otherwise. What that ends up meaning is that we as an agency are no longer allowed or no longer have the ability to send one videographer to a location where most or if not all of the people are co-located and you only have one person remote. In that circumstance, you're able to, the one where you're used to, you're able to dictate the manner in which the information is communicated from the taking attorney, and you are able to ensure that it is being able to be received in a way that somebody can see the information and hear the information. And in this case, with everyone being fully remote, we all of a sudden now are dealing with a bunch of individuals that are all on different devices. So there are some challenges that come with that, and I think that's why there's been so much curiosity in terms of learning how to share exhibits in a fully remote conference. There's a quote that many of you may have seen from our previous webinar rather. I'm going to pull that up here. Give me 1 second. I thought I had that slide ready, but it seems to have run away from me. So hold on 1 second. Okay, I'm going to share my screen over here. Oh, I just realized I did not join the Zoom on the screen I wanted to share. Bear with me 1 moment, guys. So sorry for the delay here. All right, since it's taking me some time to get that moving, I'm just going to tell you guys. The quote is, and it's from a friend of mine from a previous startup, and it said, "Good technology should feel like magic and emulate what happens in real life." And that's really the goal here. We want to, as much as possible, make this feel, remote Depos that is, as if you were there in real life. And that's what we're doing with our processes here, and that's why we landed on the processes we did as it relates to remote depositions. Give me 1 second here. I'm just going to join this. So I have a bit of a unique setup today. What I'm going to be showing you guys on my screen is I'm going to be showing you guys 2 computers side by side. So you're going to get the taking attorney's perspective of what they would see on their screen and the witnesses' perspective as to what they would see on their screen. And where that becomes important is that typically, you guys, many of you have probably played around with Zoom at this point. If you haven't, that's okay. But if you played around with Zoom at all, when you share your screen, it becomes really difficult to see what other people have on their screen. Specifically, the Zoom functionality goes away. And when the Zoom functionality goes away, what that means is that I can't show you how to click on very specific buttons within your Zoom interface. So in that vein, that's why we set up this setup today, so you guys can see that. Now I've got this set up. I'm going to share my screen here. Sorry, I'm juggling a few computers all at the same time, so thank you guys for your patience. The first topic, so we're going to cover a couple of topics today. First and foremost, we're going to talk to how do you share exhibits. We're just going to do a straight walkthrough. Dylan is going to play the role of the taking attorney, and Luke, who's on the call, he's going to play the role of the witness. We don't have the other parties here today, only because that's really where the focus is generally when you're sharing exhibits, is between those two. And granted, I realize that there are some elements there where the court reporter is going to have to get involved, and we'll definitely talk to those today. We're going to talk about what people are seeing when you share exhibits on their screen. I'm going to talk about why we picked box.com. I'm going to talk about how clients should annotate exhibits and best practices on that front. And then we're gonna finish off with how to close a Depo and make sure that all of the exhibits are handled properly. So for the first part of this, we're going to talk about how do you share exhibits, and I'm going to share my screen over here. And now that I'm sharing my screen here, You guys should all see two monitors on my screen, and that is on the left, the perspective of the taking attorney, and on the right, the perspective of the witness. Luke, who's on the screen there, is joined from his cell phone, but he's going to be the witness. There's a couple of screens that say witness, and the reason for that is I'm going to show you what it looks like on a cell phone and otherwise. So I'm going to show you the witness perspective from a cell phone and from a desktop computer, and then you have the taking attorney. So Dylan's going to walk through here on a step-by-step, and we also put a bigger mouse cursor on this time so you guys can see that easier. We're going to walk through step-by-step what it's like to share an exhibit and do a little bit of a role play in that sense. So Dylan, maybe you can kick this off and kind of walk through that process.
Sure. So for remote depositions as a taking attorney, normally I would send to Steno ahead of time each of the documents that I intend to use as exhibits during the deposition. Steno loads those loads those exhibits into box.com and then sends me an email like you're seeing on the screen here with hyperlinks for each of the documents that I think I might use. This email is only shared with me, is not shared with defense counsel or the witness, so that ahead of time they don't know which documents, if any, will be shown during the deposition. As the deposition is going on, what I do is I split my screen so that I have the video deposition going on part of it, and I have the email with the hyperlinked exhibits on the other part of the screen, so that when I want to introduce exhibits, the way I do it is I hover over the hyperlink, I right click, and where it says copy link address, I click that, and then I paste it into the Zoom chat window, like Greg is doing here. I also identify in the chat stream which exhibit it is. So if this is the first exhibit, it would be exhibit 1, and then paste the hyperlink there. So in this example, if Luke is the witness and I'm the taking attorney, and this were a deposition, this is how it would go.
And Dylan, can you actually walk through the language that you would say to Luke now that you've done that, and back up to kind of what you would say in that process?
Yeah, I was just about to do that. So, Mr. Cheney, did you see in the chat thread here that I pasted a hyperlink, which I've marked for the record as Exhibit 1?
Yes.
Okay, why don't you go ahead and click on that hyperlink, please?
Okay.
And then I would share my screen at this point and ask the witness if he sees on his screen the same thing that I see on mine.
I see the Depo notice.
Okay, and then I would stop sharing my screen and ask the witness, Mr. Cheney.
Hold on one second, Dylan, I haven't shared the screen yet. Oh, lost the button. Hold on, please. So if you were sharing it, you would hit, oh, there we go. You would share your screen. And it would, once Dylan shares his screen here, it's going to take over the screen on the right here, which is what Luke is seeing. If Luke were back in Zoom, which he's going to do momentarily here. Oops, sorry. So if Luke were back in Zoom, they would be seeing the same thing. So again, to repeat that, if Dylan were to share his screen, he would hit share screen here. He would hit share screen, and once he hit share screen, this is what Luke, as the witness, is seeing on his side. Sorry, Dylan, continue.
Yeah, so Mr. Cheney, you see in front of you the same document that I've marked as Exhibit 1 that I'm sharing on my screen, true?
Yes, I do.
Okay, at that point, I would close my share screen. I'd stop sharing. And I would ask the witness, Mr. Cheney, can you identify for the record what it is that we've marked as Exhibit 1?
It is the deposition notice PDF.
Okay, and did you receive that notice before today?
Yes, I did.
And did you read it prior to coming here?
Yes, I have. And
I'll go from there.
Great. So I think you guys get the idea here. And now I want to show something. I'm going to stop sharing my screen for a second. What I'm going to share here now is that same Depo notice on a mobile device. And what that will help everyone understand, I mentioned this in a previous call, but we want to help people understand why the fact that if a witness is joining from a mobile device or a tablet or otherwise, and they have their device in portrait mode instead of in landscape mode, what they're seeing from their perspective. And it very much differs than what you are seeing on your screen. And I think that's just the general rule here is remember that everyone is not viewing this on the same device. And the byproduct of that is that they are not seeing exactly what you're seeing on your screen. They're mostly, but not exactly. So again, if I'm Dylan and I were to share my screen again, and I've got this Depo notice here. So now I'm sharing that Depo notice, and Luke is seeing this on his screen. He's on a mobile device here, and it's shrunk that same screen that's all big and nice on Dylan's screen into this tiny little screen. So that's something to keep in mind here when you have attorneys on the call and a witness that's looking at this on maybe a mobile device, like, hey, I can't really read that, you know, and then at that point, Dylan's trying to zoom in on his side so Luke can see this very specific thing, and it's still pretty hard to see even after I zoom in here. So now Dylan's job as the taking attorney, when he is generally trying to think 3 steps ahead when he's asking his line of questioning, is now become one of a tech expert, and it becomes a little bit more difficult. That's again where we shared this chat link here for Luke, and when Dylan earlier was saying, hey, did you see the chat link? Luke can click on the bottom screen there, hit participants, and this is on an Android device. It looks like an iPhone, but it's emulating an Android device. And Luke has this link here. He can click on Exhibit 1, and it's going to open that link, and now he can view that same PDF on his native device. So I'm sure many of you guys have looked at documents before on your mobile phone, but now instead of looking at what Dylan's seeing on the left here in this screen share, just like as if you were there in person, Luke can, as the witness, can interact with the document as he sees fit. So that's again why we're creating these links ahead of time and not relying solely on the attorney to share their screen. There was a question that came in as part of the last one, which was, why don't you put exhibit stickers on these documents during the Depo? And I've seen a lot of really good content on the remote boards about different programs that people can use. I'll talk about those a little bit later, what those programs are, but I think in large part, the biggest reason why we're encouraging the taking attorney to mark the exhibit on the chat thread is that I know as court reporters, when you're writing, it's very difficult to be marking exhibits and also taking down testimony. So, you know, that's where, again, we'd encourage the taking attorney to be responsible for at least marking the exhibit in the chat thread. You as the court reporter can see that come through, and then you can always circle back and we'll, again, talk about what it's maybe a best practice to put exhibit stickers on it later. Again, if you're comfortable and the attorneys are comfortable waiting, you know, 30 seconds, a minute for you to put those exhibit stickers on and then move on to the next thing and then send them back out to everyone, that's fine. But we're really interested in trying, again, to emulate what's happening in real life. And there usually isn't that delay there in between the time that an attorney is introducing an exhibit and when they get to continue kind of their line of questioning. Does that sound right, Dylan?
Yeah, and you know, the reason that we as attorneys ask the court reporter to put stickers on exhibits during an in-person deposition is just so that we can keep track of the documents that were marked as exhibits during the deposition so that they can be attached as the right exhibits later. But in this situation, what we do is by putting everything in the chat feature, we actually are creating an audit trail. And then at the end of the deposition, the chat thread is attached as its own exhibit to the deposition. So in addition to each of the exhibits that's marked during the course of the deposition, the chat thread itself will be marked as an exhibit so that everybody sees what exhibits were marked and when, which takes the place of having to put physical stickers on documents as you go.
And we'll talk through that language in, again, a little bit. And so we're going to continue to kind of walk through this deposition from start to finish through the exhibit process and so forth. There's part of this, though, that I want to drill into. So, you know, some of the questions we saw were, why do you use chat to introduce exhibits instead of just screen sharing? So you guys just saw that it's a little bit harder to navigate PDFs, and it's a little bit hard to direct somebody on a screen-by-screen basis. So they, again, the witness can click on them, they can interact with them as they see fit. And in the same way that we sent over these, links ahead of time to Dylan, if Dylan were to get an exhibit mid-depo, he could come in here. We send him also a link to that Dropbox folder that we've created for him. Give me 1 second here. Share my screen again, and you guys are seeing that. So go to box.com. So in this folder here, he can, sorry, clicked on that too much, too quick. So in this folder now, if he had an exhibit mid-depo, he can come in here, he can upload this exhibit, click on upload.
Greg, I think you have to share your screen so we can.
Oh, I'm not sharing my screen, sorry, apologies. I'm sharing my screen within a screen, which is, it feels a little bit like Inception over here with a dream within a dream. So apologies if I get lost at any point here, guys. So I'm sharing my screen again. So again, this is what an annotating attorney, they would see on the left side of the screen. They might come in here and go into Box, and if Dylan had a different exhibit he wanted to upload, sorry. So if Dylan is in here, he could click on this upload link right here. I click on upload, I click on file, and then I choose a file that I'd like to upload. In this case, it's this long PDF document. And I'm now uploading that file here. And this file is now loading. It's going to take a second. This is a larger file. This is like a 70 or 80 or 100 megabyte file. One of the things that I had seen in a lot of the threads that were online is that people were discussing in the Zoom thread here, or in the Zoom chat, just uploading an exhibit directly. So there is an option to upload a file here directly from your computer. And part of the reason why we don't encourage our taking attorneys to do this or otherwise is that with large file sizes, and separately, if somebody's receiving this on a mobile device, they may not receive it. But with large file sizes, as I take this same document, I'm going to now upload this document here. If it'll let me. There we go. So I'm going to upload this into the chat thread directly as opposed to a link. Now you guys watch what happens here. I've got a 100 megabyte file, and it is almost 1 megabyte uploaded. So this, you could take this akin to like when somebody walks in with a 500-page document and they want to introduce that document and they only bring in 1 copy. And then sure enough, wherever the location is, they're scrambling to make 5 copies of a 500-page document. It takes some time. And the same way that me now uploading this exhibit directly into the chat thread is taking time. And this might not be done for a minute or 2 minutes. And that ultimately is taking time. So now the taking attorney is kind of losing their train of thought and it becomes more complicated. If by comparison, this exhibit had been uploaded ahead of time, so I'm just going to cancel this here to kind of highlight the point. But if instead this had been uploaded ahead of time, which it was, so once I finish uploading that document, that's here. I can hit share on it. So again, I've uploaded the document, I hit share, I click enabled share link, and this is my link right here. I can copy this link, and I can paste this again right back into the chat thread. I'm going to mark this as exhibit 2. And if I'm on the witness side over here, 1 second, minimize this. If I'm on the witness side over here, that same document that was that large file, I can click it and it passes through immediately. Now, no one's waiting for the exhibit. Again, it's stored securely in the way that Dylan described earlier for the chat thread. Getting the exhibits out of Zoom is sometimes difficult as well. So now you've got, when you upload them, getting the exhibits out of Zoom is difficult. When you pre-upload them to box.com or something of that nature, they get stored and saved in perpetuity so you can grab them at all times in that manner. So that's how attorneys are going about uploading an exhibit mid-deposition. And again, we encourage people to use that kind of methodology. I'm going to share on this as well. There's a link that I found to Box's site. I'm going to share this to all attendees, and we'll share this as well on email following this. That's a link that shows how to create shared links in box.com. I walked through it on the video here. If you didn't catch it, that help article from box.com may be able to kind of get you the rest of the way there. So I think you guys now also have a better idea of what happens to the opponent on the screen when they see an exhibit shared. They're seeing that, again, if Dylan's sharing his screen over here, you move to this version where it takes over his screen. and he's seeing the witness, Luke here, is seeing the same thing that Dylan's seeing, but he gets these mosaic tiles here that he can still see who's talking to him and so forth. There's a question that we also got along those lines of, if I am a participant like a court reporter and I'm joining this deposition, does the court reporter need to click on that link to that exhibit when it gets shared? No, they don't, because they can if they want, but they don't have to, because again, if it's done properly, all that's coming through this chat. So you can always refer back to it later, and there's a record of it that gets saved. And we take that record at the end of this and we send it out to reporters. Again, we'll touch on that a little bit more later. There's a few other questions here along the lines of for Box itself, like why did we choose to pick Box? And I'm going to share my screen one more time here. And I'm going to pull up a couple of different articles that I saw. So there are some other companies out there that do this. Companies like Edepose. Edepose is, from my perspective, rather expensive. They charge a couple $100 per deposition. And that seemed far too much money when there's cheaper alternatives like Box.com and leveraging that with the chat interface in Zoom, or stuff like Live Litigate. I saw their pricing structure. It also seemed expensive to me. I'm not saying they're bad solutions, but I do encourage you guys to check them out as it relates to their pricing structure relative to the needs you're trying to fulfill. I think Zoom combined with Box does a great job of meeting the needs for our business. And again, we're not here to dictate to anyone what they should do. We're just kind of out there walking you through what our best practices are. So as it relates to Box.com, part of it was, quite frankly, they were just, they met the right price point for us and what we were trying to achieve. We walked through just now why it was bad to upload into the chat thread directly. Again, these large files, they can take too long to upload and they don't always go through. So I tested that same 100 megabyte file earlier today to a mobile device, and it actually did not transmit to the witness. And a hyperlink always goes through, but a large file may not go through. And if you really want to make sure that the witness got that file, a link is the best way to do it. The amount of data that you're passing through with just a link is just like text, and it's super low bandwidth. And that's the other part of this. When you're uploading large documents into Zoom, you're eating up bandwidth. And that's that same bandwidth that you need to be using to make sure that we can see and hear each other. So that's why we don't recommend it. Hopefully that makes a little bit more sense. And sorry, I'm just kind of going through my notes here as I'm looking at this.
Could you touch on briefly why we chose Box.com instead of like Dropbox or other kind of free services?
Yeah, of course. So I'm going to share my screen again here. So as I share my screen and I go back to this environment, so this is Dropbox here. And if you guys noticed and remembered when Luke was clicking on that link, I'm actually going to pull up a mobile device version of this again. Hold on one second. So as part of this process, when we were kind of figuring out how we wanted to do this, I did a lot of playing around with all these different systems, and I walked through as many different scenarios as I could think of, which was, okay, people might be opening this on a tablet, on a computer, on a mobile device. Like, what's that going to feel like for them when they're doing that? So in effect, I did a lot of due diligence that hopefully you guys can all piggyback off of if you agree with my assessment. But if I'm in Dropbox here, this functionality in Dropbox looks the same. I've got the same file structure. I've got this Depo notice here that I shared with Dylan. Dylan can come in here, he can hit share. I can copy a link. Again, this looks just like Box, and there's not a lot different so far. I copy that link. I pull up my Zoom thread here, and actually I need to stop sharing. So I pull up my Zoom thread here. I'm going to introduce this as Exhibit 3. This is the same type of shared public link. And I'm going to paste that. Now Luke gets this on his side. He gets a link to Dropbox. It opens a pop-up here just once. And it says this great overlay here that's promoting Dropbox. And if I'm a witness and I'm not super tech savvy, I'm getting a promotion for Dropbox instead of looking at my exhibit, I'm immediately confused. So Box.com by comparison, if I go back to that, when I click on that link in chat, it opens straight up. and there was no extra clicks. There I am, I'm ready to go. And we're trying to minimize clicks with all that we do to, in large part, to help speed these depos up, but also to eliminate confusion. We don't want people that are on the other side of this being confused when these exhibits are sharing, and when these exhibits are shared, rather. And that's, again, why we've done this. We looked at Google Drive, we looked at a number of these different services, and after kind of playing with all of them and realizing what the feeling would be like if I were on the other side of this depot receiving that exhibit, we realized that Box.com by far, above and beyond, exceeded the things that we were trying to achieve.
And Greg, this is, managing exhibits and everything. We're explaining this during the webinar so that the court reporters understand the process, but this does not fall on their shoulders during the deposition, right?
Yeah, that's correct. And that's where, again, you guys as court reporters, or those of you that are at agencies, if you're working in an agency capacity or you need help with this, this is a great role for some of these videographer folks that are probably wondering, like, hey, how do I help with this stuff? Those folks can come in, they can help moderate these situations. They can help with the tech around this. If you have a particularly, an attorney that's not particularly tech savvy, having a videographer join to help them manage this tech and introduce the exhibits on the attorney's behalf in the same way that Dylan described earlier with the paralegal can be a great solution. Also, having a paralegal from that attorney's team join can be a great solution. Box.com is $15 a month. I have no relation to Box other than the fact that we are using them for ourselves. It's $15 a month for 100 gigabytes of storage, and we think it's a great solution for what it does. So hopefully that gives everyone a little bit more clarity why we picked it, why we're not uploading exhibits into the system here. There's also this option to do file and then click on Box. People have asked me about that as well. You can do this integration, but you have to connect it. There's a bunch of extra steps. And again, this all boils back to the same thing, which is, do you want your taking attorney going through as many steps as I'm going through here when they're trying to take a depo, versus being able to just ask questions because everything's already prepped in an email for them? Dylan, I mean, you could probably comment on that. How distracting would this be if I was having to do all this right now and pick an exhibit and go through all these prompts just to share this with somebody instead when I'm trying to just take a deposition?
Yeah, I mean, as attorneys, when we're taking depositions, we're very strategic in our questioning, and we're listening very closely to what the witness is saying and trying to think how we are going to get the admissions that we need to get from the witness. The last thing we want to be doing is clicking through all these threads and figuring out how to add an exhibit to the chat thread here.
So again, that's why we recommend uploading ideally in Box. It allows the attorney to introduce the exhibits when they see fit rather than pre-sharing ahead of time. It basically maintains what you would do if everyone was there in person, and then giving them a link to all these exhibits. So all they have to do, again, is copy this. I go to my Zoom thread and I hit paste. That is as quick as you can get. And that's why we set it up this way. And again, hopefully that helps everyone better understand why we built this the way that we did. Okay, so that takes us into annotating exhibits. Dylan, maybe we can walk through a mock version of you introducing an exhibit to Luke here of one of these other ones, and then you can have him annotate it. For argument's sake, though, I'm actually going to drop out of the sharing for a second. I'm going to put back up the computer version of this for Luke so he can operate on that instead. And we're going to have you go about introducing an exhibit in that fashion instead. 1 second to wait for this to load. How's my pace, everyone? Hopefully this is okay. I've been counseled by Dylan ahead of this to go slow so everyone gets this. Hopefully this this pace is okay for you guys. We're trying to cover a lot here, but hopefully this is working for you guys. So Dylan, why don't you go ahead and introduce exhibit. This portion of the webinar, we're going to cover how clients can go about annotating exhibits. Go ahead, Dylan.
Okay, I'm going to introduce the exhibit hallway.jpg. So I'm right clicking on it. I'm going to paste it into the chat thread. Mr. Cheney, did you see that I just added a hyperlink to the chat thread that I've marked as exhibit 4?
Yes.
And are you able to access that exhibit?
Yes.
And does your exhibit look like what I'm showing here on the screen?
1 second. I see a hallway.
Great. Do you recognize the hallway that is in the photo, which we've marked as Exhibit 4?
Yes, that is the nursing home.
Okay. And is this the nursing home where your grandma lived?
It is.
And have you been to that nursing home before?
I have.
And have you seen your grandma's bedroom?
Yes.
Great. On this document, please draw a red circle around the door which led to your grandma's bedroom.
So,
Okay.
go ahead.
I'm going to go to Annotate and grab the pen tool. And I'm going to circle the door.
Okay, so you've drawn a green circle around it. Can you change that to red?
Yeah, I can draw a red circle.
Great. For the record, the witness has drawn a red circle around the second door on the right side of this hallway. Is that correct, Mr. Cheney?
Yes.
Thank you. I would now save that. And introduce that annotation as Exhibit 4A to the record.
Great. So here's Exhibit 4A now, sharing on Dylan's screen. He's taken a screenshot of this. Because the files were originally introduced as electronic exhibits, and the manner in which these exhibits are being annotated on and just written on, quite frankly, is in an electronic version. We want to keep these two separate. It also streamlines the process. Luke is, as a witness, is not in fact marking on the original document. So as a taking attorney, Dylan is now keeping these separate, and he's able to keep that process. This marked exhibit, if it were our firm, we would encourage Dylan to upload that marked exhibit to the folder, and or the court reporter could, if she wanted to save this, he wanted to save this down to their desktop, they could then upload this marked exhibit to that box folder for safekeeping, and then could share a link of it back out over box.com in the same way that you had seen previously. We do recommend, so this annotate feature here, and I'm going to stop sharing within this. Actually, I'm going to continue, sorry, I take that back. So this annotate feature here, it looks a little bit different on both sides, and I'm going to get rid of the screenshot because it's a little confusing. But this annotate feature is in the toolbar here. If I'm the taking attorney, it's under annotate, and depending on how much space this toolbar has, so as this toolbar gets shorter depending on the device I'm on, that might be in different places. On Luke's screen here on the witness side, there is no annotate button you'll see at the bottom. So the way to get to annotate is to click on view options and then to click on annotate. And that brings up a whole cast of things that he can do. He can change the color by clicking on format. He can change the type of pen that he's using by changing this here. And under format, he can also change the line width. So there's a bunch of options, but I will tell you by default what comes up is a pen, and that pen is ready to go as soon as they're able to find the word annotate. So that's good to keep in mind. It's not that hard. I mean, in terms of, it's just like doing a drawing program on a computer here. The hardest part for most people that we found is just getting them to find the annotate button. So again, if it's a witness, remind them to click on view options and click on annotate, and that'll take them to the pen feature and they can draw. And as soon as they finish drawing whatever they're drawing, it will show up on everyone else's screen. Great. So again, finding the annotate and then clicking save when you're done, we find is a best practice. We have the taking attorney introduce the exhibit that was annotated as a separate exhibit to Dylan's point 4A, and again, you can upload it. Great, so that takes us through annotation here. The next topic we were going to cover was how do you close a Depo? So how do you export the Zoom chat link? And Dylan, maybe you can walk through what you would do as an attorney first and foremost, and then we can talk through what we would do from there. How would you introduce that chat thread at the end of a conversation?
Well, at the end of the deposition, I would just mark the chat thread as an additional exhibit. So if during the course of the deposition we had marked exhibits 1 through 5, I would just end by saying, you know, we're now, I have no further questions. We will mark the chat thread as exhibit 6 to Mr. Cheney's deposition, and we'll go by code and we'll be done.
Great. So Dylan would do that. They would introduce the chat thread on our side. We come in here and I'm going to stop sharing. Oh no, I need to bring up a web browser. So for the recordings, we get this chat file here. I can click on this chat file. I can open it. And this is an example of the chat file that comes out of the recording. So all those texts, this is a different, this is a previously saved recording, so that's why it doesn't match to what you saw in the screen share. But all of this text here is Dylan writing into the chat thread, the exhibits and so forth from a previous mock depo that we did. We then take this chat thread, we, on the production side, share that with the court reporter, make sure that they know the exhibits in the way that, that we have them in the chat thread here, presuming they do. We then marry that to the folder, the shared folder that we had in box.com, pass that to our production team, and they're able to take it and run with it. Along those lines, there were some questions and some stuff that I'd seen on the remote boards, again, about how to do digital exhibit stickers. I think there was some good content and webinars yesterday that I think some folks had held around legalexhibitstickers.com that folks had been playing with. It looked like a great tool. And whether you're doing it in real time or after the fact, I think that could be highly useful. Exhibitsticker.com, I know, is also a plugin for Adobe PDF viewer. We're tinkering with both of those on our side, on the production side, to figure out how to best do that. And the last thing that I will close with here before I kind of go back and circle back into some of these questions are, who should I have help me moderate these meetings and help with exhibits? Again, videographers are a great fit here. Most of them are highly technically savvy. They've worked with a bunch of different technologies, and they're going to be likely able to help you guys as court reporters to figure some of this stuff out. They can join as moderators. They're already used to doing that and doing their intro part as part of a normal video. And this is just a little bit of a different framework for them. But if they're savvy enough, they can probably also figure out how to get recordings of the deponents and so forth. So that's where we'd recommend you go for help. There's also been a ton of questions on the job boards, or excuse me, on the remote board for like how to get my equipment set up. And I've been reluctant to give kind of a best practices there, only because every reporter's equipment setup is different. So I would just do as much reading as you can. Talk to videographers about how to split your audio signal without getting feedback. There are splitters that you can use. Again, it depends on what setup that you have. So a blanket recommendation there is really a little bit suboptimal, and I'd recommend that you just poke around and try and find a setup that works for you. I know that's probably not the answer that many of you guys were hoping for, but because of the fact that everything's so different and can be so different, it's hard to give a kind of a blanket recommendation. That covers everything that we had planned for today. So at this point, I'm going to go back through some of the Q&A and revisit some of the topics that were in there to make sure that we try and cover everything again that we either didn't cover, or if there were different questions that had been asked. I'm going to start from the top and go through this. We can go past 5 o'clock today. We're likely not going to do a working session after this, but I will continue to answer questions, as many as I can get through before my voice gives out. So let me start from the top. There was a question that just came into chat, and it's really funny to see, only in the sense that, I mean, these meetings are very professional, but it's crazy to me that people are Zoom bombing now, which is, for context, that is people that are just probably typing in random meeting IDs, and then random people, it's kind of like wedding crashing, but for a Zoom meeting. The way to do that is to send out a meeting invite that is password protected. If you send out a password or if your meeting requires a password, you will prevent others from joining that meeting, because the way that Zoom bombing is happening is people are just typing in a random 9-digit number, and they're likely just joining people's random meetings. So that's probably the best way to go about doing that. Let me continue to go through some of these questions here. So we talked to how to hook up, call in, etc. Some of the login processes we covered in our previous meeting, we'll share that previous webinar recording with everyone on this call today. So there was also a question about the first webinar. Again, we'll share that recording so everyone can have it and listen to that. We recorded today's webinar as well that you're on right now. We'll also be sharing that this afternoon and this evening. So if there are any parts that you didn't catch or we went too quickly, you can go back and walk through it play by play. General question, actually, what's been the trend so far with attorneys stepping up and diving into video depo land? I will tell you that the more we've educated people, and I led the call with this today, the more we've educated people, the more comfortable they've gotten. And I will tell you that many of the firms that we had some concerns of like, oh, are they going to do this or not? They're picking it up and they're running with it. They don't want to stop doing their business and they're motivated. So a little bit of education goes a long way. You're welcome to share any of our training videos. I know for some of you guys that are agency owners, that may be competitive. If you want to recut your own videos or take screenshots from ours and put that in front of them, rebrand it as your own, I'm totally okay with that. Like, we want you guys to get this content out there. We want this information to get spread within the community, so that way these processes go forward and the legal process moves forward and we're able to continue to work. So do the exhibits come directly to us, or do the firms that we work with handle the exhibits and send them to us? I can tell you that we as a firm, we handle all the exhibits prior to the depo and send them to you. So that's our goal, is to make stuff as easy as possible on our reporters. I can't say how other agencies are going to handle it, but as you can see, there's definitely some steps here, and making it as easy as possible for people is definitely what we are after. Let me keep going. Are these remote depositions recorded? Do we handle them like a video depo and then compare them to a recording of transcripts? That's up to you as reporters. The video depo, we by default record these depos. We do charge our clients for a video recording of the depo, but we don't put it out there that these video recordings are going to be the same as a traditional videographer. They are very much different. So what you're seeing on your screen right now, this matrix view, is what we produce as part of the Zoom cloud recording. We can share that with an attorney, but it's definitely not of a quality that a traditional videographer would put together. There are, again, ways to do that through screen capture, but again, I would talk to your videographers about doing that because they can probably figure that out. But this is the video that we would share. Whether or not reporters charge for that and charge a premium fee, that's up to you guys, and again, becomes a negotiated item between the agency and the reporters. I know the drawing, uploading, chat, does this apply for, I'm going to skip that one because I'm a little confused as to the question.
You can probably address whether the reporters need to buy any box.com subscription. They don't need to, right? They'll just be invited to these share folders.
Yeah, so if you guys are working with us as reporters, you don't need to get your own box.com subscription. Again, this is more of my counsel for agencies, but if you're a reporter that's working with an agency and they're not set up in that way, I'd say like, hey, go watch this webinar that Zoom did or that Steno did. This is how they're doing it. It makes it way easier for everyone. I would push on your agencies to have them do it in a similar manner, because again, we think this is the most streamlined way. If people have another way that they think is more streamlined, or an agency has a different way, this is our recommendation and how we choose to do it, but that's, I mean, up to each party. But again, I would encourage them to go down this path because we found it to be the most streamlined.
And same with Zoom, right? The reporters don't need to buy their own Zoom subscription, do they?
That's correct. We provide all of that on behalf of our reporters. We send them an invite. All that you guys have to do is join the meeting. If you want to get more comfortable with Zoom, definitely there's test versions of it. You can try it out with a friend, play around with it. But by and large, you shouldn't have to buy anything as a reporter, at least as it relates to the cloud-based sharing and reporting and so forth. There was a question that came in also, can the reporter see the shared exhibits on her screen? Yes, you can. The witness view that you saw earlier that Luke was seeing is the same view that you are able to access yourself. Everyone that's a participant that's not sharing the screen is seeing that same view. So you can definitely see those exhibits and interact with them as a reporter as well. If you paste the exhibit in chat, do you still need to screen share? Dylan, maybe you can talk to why you continue to screen share instead of just pasting the exhibit in chat.
Because I want to make sure that whatever the witness is pulling up and looking at is the same thing that I have. You know, when we're sitting across from each other in a conference room, I can hand the witness a document and kind of look across the table and make sure that he's looking at whatever I want him to look at. Doing it remotely, I need to just rely on the fact that he has clicked the link and the document has pulled up on a screen. So I just, you know, as a matter of best practice, share my screen first before I start asking questions to show the witness what he or she should be looking at to confirm that that's what he in fact has in front of him. And then I begin asking my questions.
Great. So if an attorney is reluctant to, let me redo this, sorry. Does the attorney rely on the court reporter to share the exhibit on the screen instead of them doing it? I think, again, as a matter of process, it's probably easier for the attorney to share the exhibit, only because they're the ones that have the exhibits themselves. And again, if you're a reporter and you're writing and you're trying to take stuff down and also trying to navigate dropping a hyperlink into a chat panel, it seems to me at least that it may be easier to have the attorneys or to have a separate moderator handle that. If an attorney is reluctant to getbox.com, is there another easy way to get exhibits in a folder that they can have to be easily accessible? I feel like attorneys won't be receptive to using another platform. They may not be, and again, like they can use Dropbox, they can use any of these other sites, they're welcome to do it. It's just more steps when you're in the meeting trying to share exhibits. And if you're trying to keep focus as a taking attorney and you're screwing around with your shared subscription, shared file folder, it just may make things harder on yourself than it needs to be. Pat Hubbard, you asked, so now we lose video of the witness when an exhibit is on the screen. We need to see the witness. So I showed this earlier. I'm going to do this again so you guys can actually see this. So this is back to my dual display here. Sorry, bear with me. It's going to stop sharing. So this screen, I think this is something to keep in mind here. This screen that I'm on is pretty small for a monitor, and I could show you what it looks like. There's different layouts that you get, but when Dylan goes to share his screen here, what comes up if I'm Luke is a view of the screen, or if you're a court reporter, again, everyone's seeing the same thing here. I'm seeing the screenshot of what's being shared, and as a reporter, you're still seeing the different people on the screen here. Granted, some of this shrinks down, but if you have a bigger screen, you can actually make this bigger. And there are different options up here. A thumbnail, so I can hide this all together. So if I didn't want to, if I just wanted to see the exhibit, I can see just Luke, or I can click on this one, which is the same as that kind of mosaic view, and I can see multiple people's faces still on the screen to see who's talking while that exhibit is being shared. So again, Dylan is sharing a screen on the left, and I'm still seeing the people's faces on the right, as like if you start moving your mouth and say words, there we go. So he's moving his mouth and you're still able to see what's going on while this screen is being shared. So hopefully that gives you a better sense of what that's supposed to look like. How about actually having the exhibits be pre-numbered before the depo? Granted, they may end up skipping a number here and there and not introduce certain ones. Dylan, do you have a strong opinion on pre-numbering exhibits as an attorney, from an attorney's perspective? I think generally I'm comfortable with people pre-numbering exhibits. It's just in talking to Dylan, there's times where they don't have enough time to get their act together. I don't know, maybe you can give some commentary.
Pre-numbering exhibits is fine if the deposition is relatively routine and I'm comfortable the order in which I'm going to use the exhibits. I tend to be a little bit more fluid in my thinking and approach to depositions. So, you know, I prefer not pre-marking, but it's a personal preference.
Yeah, so I mean, we're trying to lean in and help the attorneys on that one, and that's where it's a little bit more difficult. There's a question, how does the witness get rid of their screen, rid of the document on their phone, and get back to the video? I'm going to pull this up. So this is, again, the phone screen here. If I'm on this screen, I just pull down if I'm on an Android phone, and I click on Zoom here to get back to the Zoom meeting. If I'm on an iPhone, I think you swipe up from the bottom And when I swipe up from the bottom, it shows all the different apps I'm in, and I can click on Zoom again. It's actually quite a bit easier to get back to it on an iPhone than an Android device, but that's its own conversation. Is a chat window always marked? Sorry, let me keep reading through these. So Lori asks, I've been using Zoom with an iPad and I'm not able to view any of the copied hyperlinks for exhibits in the chat or Zoom. Are there settings I need to change? So if I'm on this mobile device here, I'm going to go back to the Zoom meeting. You can, in fact, view the chat thread on a mobile device. On an Android device, it's participants and then chats. If I'm on an iPhone device, again, you go to the bottom here. There's a more thing on an iPhone. You click on more, and there's a chat button here that you would click to. And again, that's taking me to the same chat screen that everyone else is seeing. So you as a reporter can't see that on an iPad or otherwise. It's just a little bit smaller in terms of real estate. So that's why you don't get the side-by-side that someone like Dylan might be seeing on his desktop. He has enough real estate here to see both at the same time versus on these iPhones or tablets. You don't have as much real estate. So that's why sometimes you lose that view where you can't have both on at the same time. Can you delete a document once it's in chat? I don't know the answer to that. I haven't played around with that. I haven't been able to actually do that from what I've seen. And quite frankly, if people are all on their mobile devices anyways, anybody can screenshot it and take a copy of it. So it is a little bit, once it's out in the world, you're kind of stuck at that point, unfortunately. Question here, so is the attorney setting up the deposition meeting for the parties to attend, or there's the court reporter? I believe it's best for the agency to set it up or the attorney because they're the ones that actually have all the contact info for all the parties that are joining. How are we training the attorneys to do all of this? We're doing what you're seeing right here. We're holding webinars. We're doing one-on-one trainings. We're doing all of this stuff because education is really unlocking this to people to help them better understand that this is in fact possible. So we're taking the time, we're spending that, we're going through the education. Does the court reporting firm have the ability to save print the chat? I think we showed that earlier. It's stored in the recordings section. There's a default setting that you probably need to make happen so it shows up there. But if you change your default settings for your Zoom preferences, you can have it default export the Zoom chat. There's a question about downloading the full program of Zoom versus just using the Zoom in a web interface. So there is a way to, in fact, there's a Zoom application that you can install on your computer, which is generally what happens. It asks you to download Zoom and then join the meeting from there. Once you've installed it, many of you guys probably don't even realize it, but you click on a Zoom link, you're joining it, and it's launching that Zoom app on your desktop. It is possible to launch a Zoom through the web, but you just don't get as much functionality from it. There was a question here that says, I'm confused. It seems like it's $15 a month for Zoom is for the business account and storage is unlimited. Am I wrong? The account that's $15 a month, when you go to the Zoom, to the box pricing, not Zoom. When you go to the box pricing, it is $15 a month because it's a minimum of 3 people at $5 a month each, which gets you to their $15 a month minimum for the small teams account. So when you sign up, it looks like it's $5 a month, but it's really $15 because you have to have 3 users at a minimum. Let's see, taking attorney a little bit off topic. If the attorney is asking for the videographer to videotape the deposition, how do you do this remotely? Again, you need to do a screen capture to video this remotely. And if you guys are a videographer, you're going to have to play with the Zoom settings to get it set up right to get that screen capture. And then you need to marry the audio together with it. It's a bit complicated. We had to figure it out. We're probably not going to do a webinar on that, but again, ask your videographer friends to dig into that. They should be able to figure it out. For those of you guys that missed the screenshot step in part of this, again, we'll host that video later. You can check it out. Education and training, I agree. Annotated exhibit, let's save it. When you click to annotate that exhibit and I click on save, there's a link directly to go to it to grab that save file. If you marked an annotated exhibit wrong, you can clear your screen as the taking attorney. So if I'm the taking attorney over here and I shared my screen and I share this and I mark it, I'm going to walk through this one more time for you guys to see. Go down here, I'm going to annotate. So I can mark on this exhibit here. I can save it here, or I can also clear. So if I make a mistake, I can do clear my drawings and start over. I can also hit save and then click on this show in folder. That's going to take me right to that folder. Just so happens to be the folder I'm already on here, and it takes me to that folder here. It looks like it's a folder within a Zoom directory on my PC here, and that'll get me my screenshot. Is it the reporter's responsibility to save the chat as an exhibit? Again, that's up to however you guys want to proceed. We're doing our best practices, which are to download that chat thread and handle it in real time. Or sorry, handle it and have Zoom record it, so that happens by default, and no one has to figure out how to save it. We just have that. It's really whoever's responsibility is whoever set up the meeting to make sure that they're getting that chat thread if you go down the path that we've recommended. How long do we save these documents in box.com? And then if you're making a chat thread as an exhibit, we're saving them right now in perpetuity. We haven't really come up with a plan for that. I have a feeling attorneys may want to refer back to this. I'm not really sure on that. I do know that once we get them bound and shipped in the transcripts that we're sending out, I'd probably feel a lot more comfortable getting rid of the exhibit links in box.com. So long as the court reporter verified to us that they agreed with the chat thread. Somebody asked about the electronic sticker programs. Do they require anything other than Adobe Acrobat Reader? I haven't played around with them enough to know. So I'd encourage you guys to poke around on the court reporter remote boards. Somebody asked if there was a moderator read-in statement. That's all on our FAQ. I will share that. I'm going to stop sharing here. If you guys go to, I'm going to put this in the chat thread. So if you go to steno.zoom.us, which I just put in the chat thread, and click on, oh, sorry, I apologize. That's actually the wrong link. These are our court reporter resources, help.steno.com/court reporter resources. Our read-ons are in there. Our previous videos are in there. This video from today will be hosted in there as well as uploaded to our YouTube channel. Yes, this job board that people are asking for, it's on Facebook. I'm going to get the link to that and share that in here as well. It's a Facebook group. That's the Facebook group. You guys can join that. What else? Somebody asked why the sound and picture freeze briefly from time to time. We've actually seen each other and heard each other clearly all on our side pretty much throughout this. So that may have to do with your local internet connection. Again, that's where videographers are going to be a great resource for you guys because they're super technically capable to be able to help on that front. Somebody asked about real time. So you can do real time, and the reporters that we've worked with, they just share that out the same way they ordinarily would. Most real time, I think people are sharing via iPads in person, but many of the real time programs actually have a web link that the reporter can share. So they take that web link and then share it privately in the messages or over email to whoever they want to give that feed to. They share the login instructions, and then they're able to join that real time feed. And Dylan, maybe you can talk, you've seen that some. How does that look on your side, and how do you actually interact with it on the attorney side?
Yeah, when I use real time remotely, I have a separate device next to me, not on my computer, because I need all the real estate on my computer screen for the split screen that I talked about earlier, where the deposition is taking place on half the screen and the exhibit email is on the other half of the screen. I don't personally use real time all that often, but when I do, it's on a separate device.
There's a question here about how are we handling exhibits that may be confidential documents if the chat thread is being distributed at the end of the links are attached. I gotta be honest, for confidential documents, we don't have a great solution. And
these documents are, confidential documents are always shared in depositions between the parties and the court reporter. And these these links and chat threads are not going outside of the same universe that other confidential documents would in a normal deposition.
That's fair. When I say we don't have a great solution, there was a question that I've gotten separately from somebody that said, okay, well, I've got source code that somebody's sharing in a deposition, and they're sharing that on the screen here. And there's another company that apparently has a take back or recapture the document or something to that effect, a take backsies basically of the document. If you're sharing any document in this fashion where somebody's joining in a remote conference, that once that document is shared on my screen, there's no way to get that back. I can screenshot it, I can do whatever I want. And yeah, you can try and take it back at that point, but if somebody's tech savvy enough or they're writing code, they're also likely going to be tech savvy enough to take a screenshot. So in that kind of environment, these remote depots really, there's only so much you can do. And that's one of those parts where that kind of runs up to the upper end of it. Quite a few folks have asked us how much we charge for moderating depots. We don't actually moderate depots for anyone else other than our own clients and the own depots that we're doing. Again, I would reach out to the videographers. All those folks are looking for work right now because many of these depots aren't happening in person. Ask them if they'll moderate a depo. Our moderator reader and script is on that help.steno.com report of resources. You guys can piggyback off of that, borrow our moderator reader and script, and have videographers do that for you. They're more than happy to join, I'm assuming, and would be happy to make some money right now. When you send the link to the reporter to participate, do you monitor the depo or do you make the reporter the host? There's a way to set up in Zoom a way where people can join before the host is joined and the meeting can run after the host is left. So what we generally do is we join for the first 30 minutes, make sure that everyone's set up right, and then we leave the meeting. We just make sure that we don't click end the meeting for all. And we also make sure, again, that our default settings are such that other people can be on the meeting without us there. And in that way, then we don't have to make anyone the host. We can just come and go as we please on our side. You can only have one Zoom account running at any given time. So I can't host two meetings at the same time. That's a good way to get yourself in a pickle where you basically try and host two meetings for two separate clients on the same date and time. Whoever joins the meeting first will get access, and then your other meeting invite, which will be with a different meeting ID, won't work. Somebody asked, do I see this being the wave of the future when this pandemic ends? Dylan, maybe you can give some of the thoughts on that, because it's really the attorneys that are driving that.
Yeah, I think that remote depositions will likely be here to stay. I think most attorneys, including myself, really chose not to take remote depositions in the past because I just wasn't comfortable with them. I didn't want to learn the technology, and there was no reason not to sit across the table from somebody. But now that I've gone through all this and learned kind of how easy and seamless it is, I'm much more inclined to use depositions, particularly if it's not the key deposition in a case, right? Not all depositions are the same. Some depositions we take just to gather facts or get a witness statement that we need to get on the record. Those types of depositions are much more suitable to do remotely, even after the whole coronavirus thing passes. When it comes to the key deponent in the case, though, I'm still probably going to want to sit across the table from that person.
Perfect. All right, folks. I think we covered most of the questions. I know there's more in here. I think we covered most of the stuff that's on here. Saving the doc by screenshotting it. Just trying to make sure that I'm not missing anything else here that's of key importance. All right, folks, I'm going to probably end it there. I feel like we've covered most of the main topics here, and I tried to cover as much of this Q&A as possible today. Again, we'll share this video outbound later this evening. Anyone that registered, we're going to share it on this Court Reporter job board remote. We're going to share it over email. We'll share it on our YouTube page. We really, really appreciate you guys taking the time today. Hopefully this was helpful for you guys. Again, these are just our best practices. Hopefully you all learned something and can take something from it and make it your own. Thank you guys for the time today. And we wish you all best of luck given the circumstances of coronavirus and everything that's happening.